Well, hello, I'm Herm Gailey. We're making a video on a couple of different subjects. First of all, it's that great time of the year when horses that have been laid off for the winter start going back to work. And we're going to make a video on bringing a horse back into work in a careful, responsible way when they've had several months off. This horse has been off since about November, and we're making the video in the end of March. So November, December, January, February, March. So he's been off 4 or 5 months. Probably rode him some in November. So we brought him in, and we're just going to sort of go through our sequence for getting the horse ready to go back to work, checking him out, making sure there's nothing that would be negative on that. So that's thing one. Thing two, we recently had a video up that dealt with dangers in the horse world. And we got some very interesting comments, some very thoughtful comments, and some interesting questions. And one of the questions that I found really thought-provoking was, a woman wrote in and said, knowing what you know about the dangers of horses, and this video, sadly, was about 5 people that I know who have been killed by horses. How do you remain comfortable and confident around horses, and how can you remain comfortable with having your family interact with them? And I really thought about that because confidence is an interesting thing. Confidence is a lot different from being careless, from being casual. I think that I feel pretty confident around most horses because I am careful, because I avoid doing things that are any riskier than they need to be. So this is a big old horse. I've owned him since he was a 3-year-old. He's coming 7. He was unbroke when we got him. He was kind of a rescue. He is no great beauty, although he does look better when he sheds out and so forth. And he's been out having a good time all winter, and he looks kind of like he spent his winter months crossing the steppes with Attila the Hun. But that's slim. He's a go-to trail horse. He's a go-to horse if I've got a pony horses. I can put somebody relatively green on him and he'll take care. He'll go anywhere. If I need to drag something, I can drag it with him. So he's a reliable horse, but he's had 4.5 or 5 months off. So I'm going to take no chances. I'm going to act almost, not quite, but almost like this horse was not broke to ride, and prepare him, maybe over-prepare him to go back to work. What's the harm? So that's what I think is one of the big ingredients to being confident around horses, for being comfortable around horses, is you get some knowledge, you get some experience, but you also take care and you use some common sense. Now, one thing about a horse being laid off, for me, being laid off means he's been living like a horse out in about a 10 or 12 acre pasture, with companions, with a shed to go in. I don't know if he's spent a night under a roof since we turned him out. He certainly looks like he might not have. So he's happy as can be, and he's exercised himself. Now, he's also eaten pretty well. So if I was going to change something, I would have looked a little bit more at how much he was prospering over the winter, so I wouldn't have to take his excess weight off of him. But there he is in all his glory. So I'm going to make a mental note that I don't want to start him too strong, and that I'm going to need to shave off some weight as I get him back into shape. So those are things to take into account. But it is important that this horse was turned out. People will say, I'm going to start riding my horse again. He was off for the winter, and he's full of himself. And I'll say, well, what did you do with him over the winter? Well, he was in a stall at the boarding stable all winter. Well, did he get turned out? Yeah, every couple of days they turn him out for an hour or 2. Recipe for disaster. Take this guy who's already standing there like he's comatose, and pen him up for 3 or 4 months and you can get him out of the stall because I don't want to. So this horse has been out. He's actually had plenty of exercise. The way our pastures are set up, they go down to the far end. If they come back, they're traveling 3/8 of a mile anyway, and they do that multiple times in the course of a day and a night. They get lots of movement. But if your horse has been penned up, for gosh sakes, get him out, turn him out, get him to where he blows off some steam before you interact with him with the idea of riding him if he's had time off. So that's a way to be careful. It's something that I can avoid because he wasn't handled that way over the winter. I kind of do a general look. This horse is barefoot right now. A lot of times I like to have shoes back on him before I start on him, but he's got enough foot, his foot's in a decent shape, so that when we start back riding him, I can ride him for a week or two till the blacksmith comes next, and we'll be fine. If he was real short, real broken up, or real overgrown, I'd make the call to the blacksmith and get him shod before I started back on him. But on the safety side, you want to go over him, and I don't like grooming horses. I'm not very good at it. I'm not very committed to it, but I'm going to clean this horse up basically. And while I'm doing this, I'm making an inspection. Because number one, I don't want to find anything that I missed over the winter that requires attention. Second, I don't want to find something, for example, a sore spot down here, or what can happen when they're turned out and it's a little muddy and I've got a little bit of this here. They accumulate a bit of caked mud under their belly, and that can make them a little bit sensitive. So I want to make sure I scrub that off, or at the very least do the best I can and be aware that it's there, because it can take a while to clear that. But you can see little chunks coming off. He's had a good old time in the mud all winter, and it's been a muddy, warm winter. So you look for things like that. You look for anything on his legs. Is he swollen? Does he have any kind of wound that you didn't pick up on? Because something that might not have mattered much if he was on his own could cause him some discomfort when you go back to working him. Beyond that, I'm losing some hair. Beyond that, it can also cause you some danger if this horse had a big bunch of balled up mud under his belly and you pulled a cinch down on that. Maybe he wouldn't like that any better than if he had burrs under his saddle or under his cinch. So you keep those things in mind. You kind of do a good inspection and you look for anything that might affect his comfort or your safety. So I'm going to do this the way I'd really do it, and that is I'm going to get him basically clean enough, going to scrub off some hair, but hey. Now, you might say, is something bothering him? Yeah, I am. I don't think there's anything hurting this horse, but he was looking at me like, don't be brushing on me, because he is a horse after my own heart. He no more likes brushing than I like brushing him. Although I will confess, and let me know if you agree on this, there is very little that is more satisfying than seeing hair come off a horse in the spring. So he's clean enough. Now, see, I don't like that attitude. So, and I will tell you, this is a horse that is very protective of his cinch area anyway. So it's a lifelong thing with him. I don't think he's sore anywhere, but he objects a little bit when you get down there in the cinch area, when you draw him up. He was like that from day one as a young colt, and I've never been able to completely get him away from that. Although he reverts more when he's had time off and he feels that he is entitled to his own opinions. So he's cleaned up well enough that we can saddle him. I didn't brush out his mane and tail. If I was going to make him look nicer, I would. But I want to sort of do this in reasonable real time. So I'm going to put a 3/4 inch pad on him. And then I've got a decision to make. He's heavier than he was the last time I rode him. Last time I rode him, this pad with a light pad on top was about right for him. Heavier. This could be a little bit more pad than you want. That takes you up to about a full inch, roughly. But it's in 2 pieces. It'll draw down pretty well. And we'll see how it goes. I also suspect that with his weight gain over the winter, we'll be letting our saddle cinch out a bit. Now, when we talk about safety, here's something you might do differently. If this horse was stirred up and wanting to run around and be foolish and was being difficult, maybe you take him out and lunge him first before you saddle him, not second. And maybe you go ahead and saddle him out in your arena, your round pen, or your riding area where you've just lunged him, as opposed to saddling him here tied in the center aisle. So you can see that little bit of attitude. Candidly, there was a little bit of that in him when I put him up. I'd be surprised if it went away over the winter. And typically that kind of thing doesn't get better, it gets worse when they're left to their own devices. So if I thought he was likely to really violently object, I would take him out, lunge him, saddle him out there, not saddle him in here tied in a concrete barn aisle. It's a considered decision, and hopefully I'm right. I think I am. Now, where I could go wrong would be if I said, and I'm going to draw that cinch down real tight. Wouldn't be the right thing to do on any horse, but he's already told us, and I already know based on history, that he can be a fussy bugger about getting cinched up. So I'm going to barely tighten the cinch just to where it stays on. You can see he's registering that, but before he objects, I'm going to give him a little break and not draw that tight. So for his benefit, I'm going to put a set of splint boots on him. Not that I'm going to do anything particularly demanding, but because he is not in shape, because he is going to be free lunged in the round pen, and because he may get to sporting around and having a good time, I'd rather have him have a little protection. Again, you're doing something that involves a little risk, in this case to him, in a careful way. And you notice I'm putting these splint boots on, but I'm not underneath him. Trying to do this in a way that is quick and safe. Those are very simple splint boots. You can get more elaborate ones, but these work fine. Then I'm going to bridle this horse in here, but I will tell you that the bit that I am going to use on him is one step softer than the bit that I typically use. When he's tuned up, I like a little more bridle on him. But for him to just sort of get back into the groove, this is a very mild, forgiving bit. It's a bit I rode him in for a long time. I go back to it sometimes. And now's one of those times to make things a little easier for him. So I'm going to go ahead. Now, you could make an argument that you should put the halter around his neck. I know this horse well enough that I don't think he's going to pull away. And so I'm just going to slip bridle on, and I can tell that was on somebody maybe that was a little smaller headed. Yeah, that's pretty close to right. Pretty close to right. I'm going to drop the chain down a notch. So what have I not done? I have not pulled the saddle again. And in fact, I'm not going to pull the saddle again until he moves off the spot. Typically, I'll pull the saddle about 3 times. So I'm going to walk him out of the barn. And he's not acting foolish. He's not acting like he's real cinchy. So I'm just going to get him out here and take a couple more notches up. And we're heading out to the round pen. We'll take a little break, and then we'll just go through our routine out there. So we're out at our round pen, and I'm going to finish drawing this horse. This will be the 3rd draw on the cinch. And I know it's tight enough to stay on, probably tight enough to ride with, but after I lunge him a bit, almost inevitably, I am going to be drawing it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lunge him around here loose. You could use a lunge line, and if you don't have a round pen, by all means, use a lunge line, move your horse around. If you don't have a place that you can really lunge a horse, if you got a small lot and you can just chase him around and let him sort of level out a bit, God bless. So I want to tie up the reins. Now, believe it or not, you can have a lot of difficulty doing this wrong. For example, if you tie it up like so, you just sort of go, just pulling around there, and you tie it up like that, and you say, I believe that'll stay on. Guess what? It probably won't. It's amazing how these things come untied when they're moving around. So what I like to do, to avoid dropping a rein, having a horse step on it, jerk their mouth, I go back through the gullet of the saddle. I come up through, and then I make a loop and take it up through the horn. Around the horn, pull that tight, and that is not going anywhere. I leave him lots and lots of room. I leave him lots and lots of room. I by no means setting his head or anything like that. It's just tying up the reins to get him out of the way. Now, this is a place you can really go wrong. I'm going to step away from him and send him off, but you don't want to be loitering back there and get kicked in the face. So we'll send him around. Now, to a degree, he's on his own time. He wants to have a little fun. That's all right. He's had a winter off, and if he wants to be a little silly, that's okay. He can do it when he's out here in the round pen, as opposed to doing it with me on his back. So he's going off pretty respectably. Go on. And that's all right. He's gone the opposite direction I asked him to. I don't so much care. I just want to move him around right now. Just want to get any hump out of his back. And this horse can be a real jerk to round pen, because he'll look for a chance to turn back like that, right on cue, Slimmy. And he'll beat you to it, so I just sort of have to be ready for him. Oh, he's trotting around. He didn't buck when he loped. Let's step him up into a lope. Stop. And stand there a minute. You really ought to turn in. Would you do that for me? You're thinking bad thoughts. I can see it. There you go. So now he's all annoyed because he loped off on the wrong lead. Now, I've had horses, in fact, I was going to use another horse for this segment, but I wanted to start her a little sooner than him, and we didn't have a chance to video it. But that other one blew apart pretty good, because she's a little touchier, feelier kind of horse. He's already dreaming of going slower, so that suggests he's not going to be a problem. Gonna lope him a little. Now, go on. Okay, there you go. Now, that's about how long I wouldn't lunge him. He's fine. I'm not a big one on wearing a horse out round penning him. If he wouldn't be fine, well, I'd probably do more. I'd put him up and bring him back out after he settled down a little. But he was fine. Now I'm going to see if he'll kind of hook up with me. And that's a good sign right there that he's sort of thinking right. So, another way to get in trouble is just say, oh, great, ready to go. Well, we're ready to go after we check that cinch another time. And we check the cinch after we take our reins down, not when they're still tied up and you're hanging onto that little short end. So I give him a little tug, and guess what? I get several holes, but he doesn't object. If I had drawn him up that tight in the center aisle, I know this horse, it would have been probably more interesting to watch because he would have buckled at the knees and lay down. It's just his nature. He doesn't like to be cut in two with the cinch, and he's just muley enough to come up with a unique way of showing his displeasure. Now you notice I pulled that cinch, and even though he's moved around and been pulled up before, I moved him. Every time I pull a cinch, I move the horse before I get on. So I've ridden a number of them today. It was a good day to ride, but as the day gets longer, I start using assistance to get on. And it's also a marker. Is he going to be stupid about this? Or is he going to stand like a horse is supposed to? And I take my time, but I don't linger. I mean, I'll linger here, but when it's time to get on, I'm going to swing right on. And we didn't walk right off. That was important to me. It was a good thing that he didn't. And I'm going to move him forward now. And what I'll do after he's just moved along a little bit, I'm going to bend him. I'm not going to do a one rein stop. I'm going to bend him and walk a small circle. I don't want to choke him down. I'm a little bit conflicted about people's addiction to the one rein stop. I'd rather walk him around and let him relax a bit, let him get soft, check out just how he's doing. Is he still responsive? Relax my legs, and he should stop, which he did. But he's still leaning on that rein. He's looking at two horses out in the pasture. I'm going to hold my hand right there till he gives. I'm not pulling on him. I'm just holding. And Slim, you might want to look this way. There you go. And he took it right back. There. That's better. And he didn't rebound that time. So I'll go off the other direction. Walk a little distance. Bend him around. See, he's soft, he's nice, he's not taking his face away. And that's all green lights I'm getting. I'm getting all green lights, and I like that. So I feel comfortable saying, let's go ahead and trot. And again, I may just take his head around, bring him down till he hits a nice relaxed walk, and until he stops and relaxes the whole way, which he just is about to do. There you go. And he's relaxed. That's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. Now, could I have just put a saddle on him and ridden him right off? Sure. I think this horse would have been fine. But what if he wasn't? That one time in 100 when he gets the wind under his tail, he's feeling a little fresh. Maybe he's got some bound up hair under his cinch, and he bucks you off, puts you in the hospital, and you don't get to go riding this summer. So take a minute. And it's more polite to him. And he's telling me one thing. If you notice how much softer he was to the right than to the left, that's something that I'm noticing that I'm going to work on as we bring him back into work. So I'm just going to hold on to him until he softens up. He can lean on that as long as he feels like he needs to. There, just about. There you go. And you can see he centers himself more quickly that way. Reminds me that he is better to the right than the left. So he's ready to go out. Would I take him right out on a trail ride? I'm sure I could. I'm going to take him up to our bigger pen, trot him around out there, and that'll pretty much be the session for today. But that's the beginning phase. And then, of course, yeah, you go out. I like to go out and trot some circles and so on. But this video is getting unconscionably long as it is. So that's pretty much the beginning of the process. You finish the process or trotting some circles out in the bigger pen, and the next day you saddle him up, you go out and ride him in the big pen, take him out across country. Don't overwork him, get him into shape, you're back in work. So that's real life, real time, how I bring a horse back into work. It should be that easy. Would it have gone the same way if I just saddled him? I think so. But the other horse that I did the same thing with a few days ago, I would have said the same thing about her, but I saddled her and she broke into and bucked and bellowed and, acted like a little Peppy, which is the way she's bred. They've got a little of that in them. This horse doesn't expend unnecessary calories, but you never know. The old Mexican saying, your gentlest horse will hurt you the worst. Keep that in mind. Be careful with the good ones. Be careful with the bad ones. Be well, be safe, and have fun.